Welcome to the Transformative Neurotherapy podcast with your host, Dr. Heather Putney, founder and executive director of Transformative Neurotherapy. This is the place where healing happens faster. Because let's face it, your brain doesn't come with an owner's manual until now. Here, we take a holistic approach to brain health, bringing together science, mind-body harmony, and the tools you need to optimize your well-being. Whether you're a high performer, executive, athlete, longevity hacker, or just someone tired of your brain working against you, Dr. Putney is here to help you unlock your full potential. From brain fog to chronic stress, we're covering it all so you can finally experience brain health, mind harmony, and total well-being. Ready to get unstuck? Let's get started.
If you've ever wondered what actually happens during a neurotherapy session, Dr. Putney breaks it down from intake to transformation. Welcome, everyone. I am Millie M., co-host and producer here in the studio with Dr. Heather Putney, founder and executive director of Transformative Neurotherapy. Hi, Dr. Putney. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I am glad to be here with you today. Let's dive into today's question. What does a typical neurotherapy session look like?
We last session talked about what is an EEG, and based off of the brain scan, we set up a very specific targeted protocol for each client, and that protocol is very different between the frequencies of electricity that we send when we're doing the electrical stimulus to the noise and the LED lights and the placement of those. So it's very, very specific. So no protocol is going to look ideal. Is going to look equal for each client.
So what does the intake process? So the intake process is that EEG and that brain scan. Is there anything additional that goes along with that before the first session even begins?
The EEG is part of the assessment process.
Okay.
So before we even get there, we will actually do a pretty advanced kind of intake process where we basically want to know what symptoms you have, what diagnoses do you have, any medical conditions, any medicines or supplements that you're on, because all of these can impact your brain. We want to know if you've had any head injuries and just various other things. So we collect actually a very holistic, background before we even get started. And then one of the most important questions is, what do you want to know about your brain? What symptoms what symptoms are most bothering you, and what do you want to know about your brain? And so when we're collecting all this information, we try to kind of hone in as to like why they're feeling certain things or what they're trying to find out. So at the end, when we're presenting the final review session before we start treatment, we're hoping to answer some of those questions. And then we're also giving ideas as to what we're recommending to help balance the brain.
Makes sense. If your goal is to beat your family in Jeopardy, like me, like we talked about before. So you do that EEG, you do that intake, then you do the EEG and the assessment. And are there any other things that you use to determine which protocols to use for each client?
No, it's pretty much basically what comes out of those reports. Gotcha. And then, like I said, that's what guides what we're going to do and the specific placements where we're going to be with the client.
So once you've determined what those protocols are, can you walk us through what clients experienced during that first session?
Sure. So usually with most clients, like I said, I'm guilty of liking everyone to heal the fastest possible. So I tend to throw in all my tools, so we have pulsed electromagnetic field, PEMF, which are like these little boxes right here. And there's different frequencies it can send. Last session, we talked a little bit about the different frequencies the brain creates. So it can create any of the frequencies that the brain creates, and it can also do brown noise, pink noise. That's actually stuff that the brain creates. There's been a lot of hype in the news about brown noise helping sleep, things like that. Mm-hmm. So we can also, send those frequencies. So someone's having trouble with sleep, or we have that overaroused, maybe hypervigilant brain, sending a little bit of brown noise might help with help with sleep, stuff like that. We can also send an inflammation reduction protocol that we tend to do on the gut, that brain gut axis.
Yes.
So we will frequently, if we're seeing some signs of possible inflammation, systemic inflammation, we may actually put some inflammation reduction on the gut, and we may put a little bit of something else on the head. So we might actually treat that brain gut axis using the PEMF. And this actually, you don't really feel anything. It's super gentle. You could use it on a baby. It's it's a magnetic frequency, and it's a magnetic pulse that that kind of like bathes the area with the frequencies that that we are targeting. So like I said, this, you could put the whole thing kind of on the head if you're trying to bathe the head, say in brown noise or in 13 to 15. That's that nice kind of like focus. So maybe you got a kid with ADHD or something, and they're kind of a little bit, that brain's running a little slow down the midline or something. We want to like kind of speed it up a little, get it to focus. Maybe we're going to train it a little bit by experiencing a little bit more of that 13 to 15 and so forth. We also use, my show and tell, our LED lights. Okay. And so we have we have the 810 frequencies and the 1070 frequencies, and we can also combine the two to penetrate about 2 inches into the brain. So we might be trying to target maybe the anterior cingulate, which is part of the brain that's responsible for emotional regulation. So we may, be trying to shine the light kind of right there into the anterior cingulate, or the insula, or maybe we're working with the trauma center, or we've got, some dyslexia or something like that. We'll put the light over the brain. When you've got hair like mine, we try to like get a little bit closer to the scalp.
Yeah, I gotcha. Me too.
Yeah, you kind of like try to get a little bit closer so that it's, not quite so impeded by the hair. But we're actually putting that light in the specific spots that is indicated by the record. And then the final thing that we use is the electrical stimulus. And so we actually have little electrodes. We'll put a little bit of kind of goop that helps kind of like stick it to the head. So we'll kind of like, say we're going to do the spot right here. We'll put a little bit of goop, and it'll kind of like just help it to kind of stick to the spot of the head where we want to do that. And it'll send a little bit of electrical frequency. This is kind of like a TENS unit, but on the brain. So if you've heard of anybody that maybe they've got lower back issues, or they've had some sort of muscular issues, and so they'll use low current electrical stimulus on that area to drive more blood flow, oxygen, and nutrients to the area to help it heal. This is a pretty similar in idea, but not only do we do low grade current on the brain, we also can send specific frequencies. So it's not just like regular, it's not just like a Blake current, but we can actually send like more of that 13 to 15 for, maybe our ADHD kid that's spacing out and kind of in la la land, too much theta going on, too much dreamy, not enough thinky, that's what we'll say. So, we'll try to like, train that brain a little bit to experience a little bit more of that focus, that 13 to 15. So we'll put that frequently through the frontal lobe if we're having issues like that. Or like I said, if we've got trauma and they're a little hypervigilant, we might put some parasympathetic or some slower waves, through that area to kind of calm down and chill the brain. So like I said, we tend to combine all three so we get the best bang for our buck.
I love that you're able to show us the actual tools that you use. Our brains are such amazing organs, and there's a frequency you have and there's a frequency you need, and being able to send that frequency that you need to the brain and have those waves match that is just, it's just such an amazing thing. I have a question for you though. What do you say to people who might be a little bit skeptical? Because we're not doctors. We can't see what's going on. You say there's no pain involved, or, I don't know how much you feel when you put these things on top of our heads. So what do you say to someone who's like, yeah, right, you're charging me because you say these waves are coming, but I don't quite know? Or do the results speak for themselves?
Well, like I said, we will do, a handful of treatments depending on the intensity of the treatments. And then we'll do a rescan. And those rescans, you will see where the brain started and where the brain ended. And you can see distinct shifts in that. But not only that, people tend to, within a couple of treatments, notice or feel something different, sometimes even as fast as the first one. Like they'll go home that night and they'll say like, I have not slept that peacefully in so long. Now that doesn't mean we're one and done. The brain needs more time in that space to hold it. But, some people will notice changes as early as the first treatment, but usually you're going to see, some people say like somewhere between that 9 and 10 is where the brain starts to kind of click it, because we've been teaching it, that whole time. And it seems like we kind of start to get that traction somewhere between that 9 and 10 where people start to feel changes. But we're also monitoring their whatever their symptoms are. So if it's depression, anxiety, ability to focus at work, sleep quality, whatever symptoms that are bothering them, we're tracking them at every treatment. So we're watching these numbers come down. We're tracking symptoms, but then we're also going to rescan and compare. And so that will speak for itself at the end of the day.
Having those results, I bet, are so liberating to your clients. So are there any common misconceptions about what neurotherapy feels like or what it is or the results?
Neurotherapy is so new, the way we do it with the neuromodulation, that I don't think there's enough people even know what it is to have a ton of misconceptions. But I will say that you do feel, when we're doing the electrical current, like you do feel it, you know something's happening. This is not silent. If you're putting a little bit of electrical current through your body, like you will feel it. Kids, we do this with kids up to adults, and so some of the words that the kids or the adults use is like zippy, tingy, scratchy, bitey, zappy, things like that. So you feel something going on,
Gotcha.
Something's happening. With the LED lights, sometimes you might feel a little bit of heat from the light. You don't usually feel that. And with the magnetic field, you don't really feel that at all. But you will notice, that this is going on.
Can't put electricity into a body and not feel it.
Right. But I will say that like the FDA says that anything under 4 microvolts of electricity on the brain is safe. We don't go above 2, and we start even lower than that and kind of build up to our functional dose. So we're staying like way, it's very, very low voltage compared to, we've got electric shock therapy and all those things. We're talking it's magnitudes, different than what we're doing. This is a very, very minor thing, but it's enough to add, to increase blood flow, to improve neurogenesis, and get the results that we want to see. So we don't need to take a jackhammer when a chisel is, we'll get the results.
Safe, pain-free, and results proven. Thank you so much for walking us through that and showing us all your tools. Incredible insight. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Transformative Neurotherapy podcast with Dr. Heather Putney. Remember, your brain isn't supposed to hold you back. It's supposed to power you forward. So stop letting it crash your party and start letting it do its job. If you're ready to optimize brain health, sharpen your focus, and age like a fine wine, schedule your free consultation today at transformativeneurotherapy.org or call us at 412-204-7397. Because here, healing happens faster. See you next time.